Recently, I made a video that showed how to take multiple objects and nest them so you can manipulate these objects on the screen and all at once. And I said in that video, if someone comes along and says, hey, I want to know how you constructed that timer and show us a tutorial on that, then I would do it. And someone came along and said, how the hell do you do that? So I'm going to show you how to do that. Now this should apply to just about any video editor. You'll be able to extrapolate what's going on. I'm not using anything fancy or special. Most of the higher end video editors will do all the things I'm doing, and some of the lower end video editors will too. So let's go over here and I'll show you how to do this. Now here we are in Premiere Pro. In fact, you're watching me at the beginning of the video. I just brought that footage in and stopped it. And all we're trying to do is we're trying to bring in a timer. So right here comes in the timer. Comes in and it just counts down. This can be whatever seconds long. We can have it be that long or whatever long, 59 seconds. So what we want to do is we want to recreate this thing and then be able to manipulate it as I've shown, make it big or small or however you want to do, and animate it in. That's covered in the other video. This video, we're going to just make this timer. Now the way you make this timer is, if you look in here, I have this nest. This is where all the elements lie. Over here, it's taken all these elements here and it's shoved them into this one thing. Again, watch the video that's referenced for this video on how to take this and nest these things and animate them, and then I'll cover everything. All we're interested in here is what's going on here. Now, I'm just going to go through the elements real quick and then we're going to recreate them. You'll see here I have this pink color mat. Let's turn that on. See how that's on there? The only reason I add this little pink color mat back here is while I'm creating something, I can see what's going on. Pink usually doesn't interfere with anything else. Now, what we have here, these elements, let's turn all this stuff off. We have this counter right there. Counts from there to 59. Behind that, we have this other graphic. That's this guy. It's just a black background and Outtakes is all it says. There it is sitting there doing its thing. Then behind that, another yellow circle, and you'll see how easy this is to do. And of course behind that, I have this red line. Here's our nest timer right there. It starts at 0, it counts up to 59, and all we do is we go right click, we say speed and duration, we just reverse the clip, we reverse the speed, and now it starts at 59, it counts backwards. Doesn't matter how long you make this, we can make it that big and it'll start at 6. We go back into the nest, we turn off our little pink color, come back here, and there's our nest. And it's see-through, so when you come over here, let's ditch this one and I'll show you what I mean. So when you bring this nest over here, it's see-through. And then again, you can manipulate it, you can change the opacity of everything, about there, probably about there, 90. You can scale it, you can move it to where you want, etc. And it'll do this little countdown. Okay? If there's any questions, go see the other video. Okay, so let's go over here and we're going to create it right here so I can reference what I'm doing. Now the first thing we have here on the top is just Essential Graphics. Make sure your Essential Graphics panel is opened. If it looks like this, or something like this, I don't know how you edit or how you do your workspaces, just open Essential Graphics because that's where we're going to be working, and go over to Edit. We're going to click some over here, make sure nothing's selected. We're just going to create a new text. We're just going to make a big long dude like this, and let's move it up here. Now the interesting part of this is we don't need this text. What we're going to do is we're going to go to Effects. The first thing we're going to do is type in time. You can find this under Video Effects, Video Time Code. For instance, we could go this way too. Video Effects, Time, Video, Time Code. And what's time code? Let's just drop that in there. Hey, what's that thing? This is time code. It counts up and down. You've seen these on like movies and stuff like that. We're going to use that as our counter, which means this text layer up here, we can just delete that. So now we have this time code and it's counting. Now to understand this time code thing, the first thing you need to know here, looking at this time code, is we don't want this little marker indicator. So here's the time code. Let's close all this stuff up so no one gets confused. And it's just an effect. We're just sitting here with an effect on this thing. And first thing we're going to do is we're going to take off that field symbol, that little dude right there. Here we go. Click that off. Boop. We're done. Now we have frames, seconds, minutes, hours. That's how that works. Frames, seconds, minutes, hours. So you'll see it's counting up frames, right? Now this is 30 frames per second. So it's going to start at 0. And when it gets to, what's this? 6, 27, 28, 29. It's 29 frames, 30 frames per second, 29.957. When it goes to the next frame, it's going to flip to 1 second. All we care about is these seconds. So what do we do with this? Let's go in here and just, for right now, let's just grab this. These are mask tools. We could do it under here, but we're just going to mask it off. In other words, we want everything inside our mask to be shown and everything else outside of it to go away. So we're just going to click on this square. Boop. We're going to move this square. There it is. See how that works? We're just going to sit there and put that guy right about there. Now this feather is how much am I going to allow to bleed through. I set it to 0. Just set it to 0 because you want a fine line. I'm going to hit the tilde key over the tab key so I can go up full screen. You need to have this set to fit. When you do that, you'll be able to see it. Now I'm just going to take this side, I'm going to select those 2 lines, and I'm going to move those over to like here. Just like that. You can grab each point. It doesn't matter, the top and the bottom. It doesn't matter if this thing's sitting here like this. And we're just going to put this kind of like that. All right. So now we have the text masked out. So there's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is seconds. Now the only time you're running a problem is when you get to 11. Boop. There it is. You can see some little goobers there. Again, tilde key. We're just going to pull that in a little bit. Make sure we mask out that. Let's unclick it and see what we got here. Make sure nothing's showing up. And there we got our seconds going up here. Here's 0. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, etc. seconds. So we're going to probably go down all the way to, because remember, for seconds, it's going to get to 59 seconds and it's going to go to 1 minute. Now, if you want to, you can go through and you can mask and put minutes in there or whatever you want to do. That's okay. I'm just showing you how to do seconds. I never need that little counter to go more than 59 seconds. It's usually 10, 15, 20 or something like that. So that's working out. We have that text. Now that we have that, we're good. We can do all sorts of things with this. I'm not going to go into it in this video. We basically have some seconds and it's counting down and it's doing the right, correct thing. Cool? Cool. So now we can close that up. You can open up your motion. Stay out of here. There's nothing in there, remember? You can open up your motion. You can scale this thing up. You can move this thing like this. And you'll notice as I'm scaling it up, look at there. I can scale it up. I can make it big and everything else. Just leave that alone for right now and just leave it all the default. Now the next thing we have is we have over here is we have another essential graphic. We have Outtakes and we have the black background. Let's turn all this other stuff off. Delete, delete. There's our counter. And behind that, there's that. We have our Outtakes. It's just text. And then we have what I call a black background. And let me show you how to do that. So over here, I can create a new graphic or I can simply drag the existing one I have using Alt, drag it down to the next layer. What I've done is I've made a duplicate. I can get rid of this time code thing. We don't need that anymore. And I'm going to create an ellipse, basically a round thing. Now, because I have all these set up, it's already set to what I last used. So let's just clear this out. This is how it'll usually look probably on your computer. It shows up gray and this isn't on. And that's what you usually get. What you want to do is you just want them to take and make a circle. About this big. Now I create all these graphics and these things that I do on here. I create them as big as I can here because when they look good and when I scale them down to the size I want, whatever. It doesn't matter if this is not a perfect circle. You just want to eyeball this. Once you get it and you're like, okay, that's good. These 2 little dudes right here. Vertical center this, boop. This guy here, horizontal center it, boop. Now we know that's in the middle. Now the thing we want to do is we want to change this to a black background. But if we do that, what's happening is you're going to be like, uh-oh, where'd that thing go? Let's undo it. This is why I have this color mat. So over on here, let's go over here color matte. Take whatever it is. I work in a 4K space. It doesn't matter, whatever space you're working in. And of course, 29.97, basically 30. Click that. I click somewhere down here in pink, move that down. I say, create me a pink color matte. I'll probably say pink matte. Boom. Now I got a pink matte. I'm going to drag it in here. Let's turn that on. Boom. There's our pink matte. Let's move it down here to the bottom. Now we got our pink matte and we can see our circle here. Let's go back here to our circle. And I usually name everything. I'm going to call this black background. My black background, all I'm going to do is I'm going to say I want it black. Boop. And then I want here, you can barely see this, I want a stroke. Normally when you do this, it's probably like this. It's probably white. I set mine to yellow. You can use any color you want. And then I set it to 30. It's a nice, deep, dark stroke. Again, this is all centered on the screen, right? So now we got that. All we need to do is add some text. So let's add some text up here. And we're going to call this, double click that and call it Outtakes. I just realized I've been spelling this wrong the whole time. Doesn't matter. It has 2 T's. So we make it maybe about this big and we're like, okay, let's center it on the screen right there. Boop. So we know it's centered on the screen and maybe we stick that thing right there. Cool, huh? Let's go back to our graphic up here, our little countdown timer, and you'll notice, oh, look at that. You can see a little background on this thing. Let's move this thing down here so you can see. See how it has a little background? That's what the time code thing does. So let's go back to our time code here and let's turn off the opacity. Now you may think the opacity would do something to this. It doesn't. It does something to the background. See that? It's 100%. Just set the opacity to 0 and we're good. So let's just close all this up. We don't need this anymore. Now we have our little dude down here and we can move it around. Do whatever we want. If you like to, if you understand anchor points, I'm not expecting you to. This anchor point is sitting right here. You can always take that anchor point and drive it down into the middle, and that way it'll hit the middle of this thing. It doesn't have to be perfect, but when you scale it, it will scale up around that. So maybe I want it like, maybe about that big. Hey, see that? A little bit still left in there. And maybe I put this thing down here and put it in right about there. 478. I like even numbers. Let's see what 500 does. Yep, 500. That'll work. Now I can see this little piece of goop here. So I'm going to go back down here in my time code and just click on my mask. Maybe bring them. Yeah, I could see that. There we go. We're done with that. Let's click off of that. Now we got our timer doing its thing. Now you notice again, it gets up here and it hits 57, 58, 59. It's going to go back to 0 because it's 1 minute now. We don't care. If you want to do that, then you can go in and click on the timer, the time code. You can go to this mask, and if you wanted to, you could just go, okay, well, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do minutes too. And then you'll get the timer with the minutes and it'll count down 1, 2, etc. We're not going to do that. I just want seconds. You could do it however you want. Okay, cool. So now we got this thing working. It's cool. Everything's great. Cool. Now, the next thing we have over here, if you look, if we have another graphic, this is just, again, it says black background. It actually shouldn't. But what I've done is I want the same thing happening here. Let's turn these off. Boop, boop. That guy, let's turn off that. That guy is a little outside yellow line. See that? That's what that guy is right there. Boop, boop. Now, it's really easy to create this thing. All I need to do is I go in here. Again, I'm going to Alt drag this down so I don't have to recreate everything. I don't need this text anymore, right? Click on this black background. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to this motion. I'm going to scale this guy up right about there. That looks okay. We'll do right about here. And then we're going to take off the fill. See that? So what I'm left with is another circle. Cool, huh? So let's put our counter back on. So now we got our counter with our outside circle. So now what are we going to do? Because we want to come through here and we want this dude, this red line here, to do that cool clock thing. Well, this again, all this is, notice black background. It's kind of mislabeled. We're going to come back over here. We're going to grab this guy we just did the outside of. we're going to Alt drag down like that. Now this time we got that black background, and instead of this stroke, we're going to change it to red. Boop. You can change it to any color. You can't see it because it's behind this guy. Boop, there it is. And then we're just going to increase the stroke to 100. And there we go. Now I get a stroke of 100 in and out of there because this is behind here. So the yellow's covering that up, this is covering that up, and this is covering all that other stuff up. So now, in short order, we've kind of got this timer. Now what we want to do is we want to make sure, for my purposes, you can do a minute or whatever. I'm going to start at 0. I want to come up to 59, 58, 59. Now you'll notice, there it is. Let's go back as I right arrow. Boop, there it is. I want to get to just where it turns 0. I'm going to grab all these elements in here and I'm going to scoot them down there. So there we go. We start at 0. We hit 59 and then we're done. So now what we want is we want this effect over here. We want it to, remember, we're counting forward. We're going to reverse it in the timeline that we're actually going to use this on. Okay? Okay. So we come over here, and on this graphic, this guy, this red line, that's the one we want to move. It's very simple, a very simple effect. Let's go over here. You can do this a number of ways. You can search for clock, or you can go into video transitions, wipe. We're just going to use a clock wipe. I'm going to add it to this guy right here. Again, mine are very, very small. You can set the defaults for this. Let's set it to 2 seconds. Now you can see it. So there's that clock wipe, right? I'm going to click on that. We're just going to, so you can see what's going on here. Now you'll notice the clock wipe is going along, and it's basically clock wiping this thing on here all the way to there because that's how long it is. Well, we want it to do the whole thing. So we're going to grab the clock wipe. We're going to drag it all the way down to the end. And there we are. We have a full clock wipe. See that? Now we got our clock wipe going. There we go. So that's everything we need. So now the trick, as I showed in the other video, is we're going to take all this stuff that we've created. You can create it on your main timeline if you want. We're going to grab all the stuff we created. We're going to right click. We're going to hit nest. We're going to call this nest demo outtakes timer. We'll call it that. Boom. So let's go over here, and there's my nest demo outtakes timer. See how it turned green? It's all in there. So when we double click on it, boop, we end up in the nest demo outtakes timer. There it is. We can move this down. We don't really have any audio. Boop. And there's all our stuff in there up to 59. We're done. Let's save this. Boop. Now when we go over to, let's say this guy here, let's get rid of this old one. We go over to this guy here, we have this nest sitting here, and we can drag it in, and there is our timer. Now it's starting at 0. It's going that way. The other thing is the pink background's on. So let's go back over, double click here, or a double click here, or click here. Double click, it'll open up that. Let's turn off our pink mat behind. Beep. Come over here, there it is. So now we got our timer. It starts at 0, it counts up, it keeps going. We want it backwards. Right click, speed and duration, reverse the speed, boop. Now it's going to go backwards. It's going to start at 59, and it's going to keep with this little timer going backwards like that. Now maybe it's the end of the video, maybe it's right about here that I want this thing on. So don't mess with this side. So just take this thing, maybe the video ends right here, boop. And that's where we go to the outtakes. Bam. And let's say I want the outtakes thing right about there. Just make it right about there. Comes along. Beep. That's how big it is. Now, again, per the other video, we've created our little timer. We can do all sorts of things to that. And I'll show you a few more tricks. For instance, if I click on the nest, because now we're controlling everything. Remember? Click on motion, you can move this thing. We're controlling everything. Everything's now self-contained. Let's undo that. I want to make this smaller. Let's say I want to make it about that big. Click on that. Maybe I'll move that. Maybe I'll move that right there. So the thing comes along, it goes, ba-da-da-ba, bam. Here's the outtakes. It'll count all the way down. It'll get over here. Boom. It'll go over to there. Okay? Just like in the video that I showed. So now we can play with this thing. Let's go to the beginning of the nest. I'm going to go shift right arrow. That's 5 frames. I'm going to set a keyframe. Boop. Shift left over, arrow. And then I'm going to animate it off. It's going to create another keyframe here. Beep, 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 beep. Right there. So now it's going to slide on the screen and do its thing. Now you can do the same thing. Let's go look at these keyframes. See them right there? Yeah, they are. 5 frames right there. We can do the same thing. We can click and go there and go there. Let's go over here to where it's on the screen. Let's set a rotation on this. Boop. Let's go to where the beginning of this thing is. We already know it's there. And let's set that to 0. And on the keyframe where it comes in, let's set it to 1x. What does that mean? That means it's going to spin 1 time from off screen onto on screen. So now we got this happening. Zoop, like that. Now another trick you can do if you want to is you can do all sorts of stuff to this thing. I could even do weird stuff like this. Let's go play with this effect. This is fun. It's a little 3D effect. It simulates basic 3D. Let's add that to our nest here. Let's come over here. 3D, it basically swivels. Undo that. Tilts. And all sorts of stuff. We can keyframe that too. Let's go back to where we want it and let's do a little swivel. And then maybe let's set that there, and then let's over here, let's set that to here, like that. We'll say 22 degrees. So this thing will slide in, zoop, and it'll sit there kind of like, gives it a bit of a 3D look, little timer sideways. You can do whatever you want to this. Now here's another trick. Let's just go back and reset all this stuff. Let's get rid of the keyframes on the swivel and the 3D. Let's get rid of the 3D effect. Let's take off the rotation. Let's click on the time, take off that. Now you can do a little trick here because remember, if you want to make it this long, right? Now you're going to have to take those keyframes and move them. It's not hard. Let's go back and undo this and I'll show you what I mean. There's our position keyframes back in. See them right there? And let's say I want this thing to come onto the screen and I'm like, hey, I need to make this longer. No problem. Just go to the beginning here, go up to here, hit the tilde key, the one above the tab key, hit the full frame, grab those little suckers, move them down there, boop, and then you got it. Whew, and there it is. Now, a real cute trick to do, let's take off all keyframes. A real cute trick to do, is let's just use an effect again. And what we're going to do, we're going to use a transition. We're just going to wipe it onto the screen. So let's say we add this effect. See how little I have my stuff set. And let's say it's 30 frames a second. Let's set it to 24, just for the heck of it. There's my wipe effect. So now it wipes on. So that comes along and wipes on. It almost looks like it's coming in, right? Cool. Let's add a wipe effect to the end. Boop. Let's set that to 24. I'm double clicking on that little dude, setting it to 24 frames, and then it's going to wipe off. Chic. That's going the wrong way. Look at that. Tweet, 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 tweet. So let's go into our effects, click on this guy, and let's reverse that. Right there. Boop. So now it's going to wipe off. You see that? Why would you do that rather than the other way? Because now this thing, no matter what I do, let's say I set this thing to this long. Notice the wipe stays at the beginning and the wipe stays at the end. So no matter where I put this, no matter how long I make it, you have that semi-cheap, poor man's animation occurring when this thing comes on. The other thing that happens is you're not messing with keyframes. So if I take this thing and I decide to scale it down, since there's no keyframes, and I decide to put it down here, it doesn't matter. No keyframes are being created. Wipes on, wipes off. You can add all sorts of effects and stuff like that. And that's how you do that. And again, if you need to edit this for some reason, you just double click, and there's your original creation right here. You can turn it on, you can modify this, you can add more rings, you can take off rings, you can do stuff like that. Last thing I would probably do to this, I'm going to add pink. Let's take off the pink background. Last thing I'd probably do to this, just to add a little touch to it, is it's totally black. And instead of going in and setting, you can go in here and set all these things by hand. I would just do the whole thing. Usually about, notice how it's black. Let's go into the opacity and set it about 80%, about 90%. It's just a nice touch because you can, let's hit the tilde key. You can see, you can kind of see through there, which is kind of nice. So whenever I put it somewhere, kind of see me back there. Whenever I put it somewhere, it kind of gives that nice touch where you can kind of see through, gives a little bit of transparency. How about that? There you go. That's how you do it. Person asking, how the hell do you do that? You can transfer this over to other editors. All editors will allow you to keyframe things. Most editors will allow you to encapsulate or nest things. For instance, on Final Cut Pro, they call it something else. I believe DaVinci Resolve allows you to do this. I don't remember what it is. And you can keyframe these things. Most editors have the time code marker. Almost every editor on the planet has these wipes and everything else. So you should have no problem transferring this to your particular editor. And that's how you do that. Don't forget, I have free and some great paid courses over at Basic Filmmaker University. I hope that helps. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Now see, this is where outtakes. I always have outtakes. I didn't on this one, surprisingly enough.